But America Recycles Day is really important because we need everybody engaged in the effort on recycling. When we think about materials, we think pretty big picture here at EPA, and materials are responsible for about 50% of greenhouse gas emissions. So when we process and extract all of that material to make the products that we use every day, that contributes to climate change and global warming, and it contributes 50% of greenhouse gas emissions. So that's another reason. But it's also important because recycling allows us to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions, and it allows us to use less of the materials that are, quite frankly, now really precious and harder to come by as different supply chain issues continue to materialize across the world. So that is very much how we're thinking about it here at EPA.
So what happens today? How do we celebrate this holiday, I guess you would say?
We are going to announce that our bipartisan infrastructure law, the 2 grant programs that we got in that piece of legislation, we are going to announce the funding opportunities that are going to be available to states and territories and communities across the country to help with some of the education and outreach challenges, as well as infrastructure that exist.
Some parts of the country, it's really easy to recycle. Other parts, it's not. How do you address that? And then what advice do you have for folks that maybe live in an area where it's really hard to recycle?
Sure, I totally get that. I think the first thing that we think about is reuse. We tend to not always think about reuse, but a lot of materials, whether it's a plastic bottle, it can be used in any number of ways, including to make a bird feeder out of it. Reducing is also important. Like, how can you just use less as we think about our everyday life? And it can be challenging, but at the same time, I think about using less plastic, given that plastic is a really big issue. And one way I do that is I use bars of soap as opposed to liquid hand soap. And so in some ways, it's like going back to what we used before. It's not really making significant changes, but a little bit goes a long way. And we need everybody at this point in order to help us with these issues.
Yeah, that's a really great point. A really easy tip to do too. You say everybody. Do you find that children are kind of the way of the future when it comes to this change of thought and the change of the way that we use and reuse things?
I think children are absolutely crucial to this. As we think about climate change, we have seen across the world all of the incredible enthusiasm of young people on this issue and how important it is to them. And as we think about the school-age children and what they're learning, there is recycling curricula that has been used, and we are going to have more as well. And it is so important because kids want to do the right thing, right? And they want to help. And they know there are issues. And these are issues that they can learn. They can figure out what is recyclable or how to reuse or how to reduce.
How does recycling affect weather and climate?
When we extract materials and make them into products, it ends up creating emissions. And it's about 50% of the global emissions on climate. So that's one piece of it. And so to the extent that we can either recycle or use less, reduce and reuse, I keep going back to that, it's really important because we will reduce the emissions that impact climate change.
So plastic bags don't tend to be recyclable. Why is that? And what can you do about that?
Sure. So plastic bags can be recycled, but we don't want to put them with our recyclables in the blue bin. And that's because the plastic bags can get caught up in the materials recovery facility machinery. So what we tell people is that often your grocery store or a local facility will take all of your plastic bags and plastic film, the film that comes around your paper towels or your toilet paper, for example. You can collect that all and take it to your grocery store, and they will recycle it. And it's fantastic. And that's what I do with mine. Every community has rules on what they accept in their recycling program and what they don't accept. So we really encourage people to know their local rules, and when in doubt, throw it out. It sounds terrible, but it really is the right message, because we don't want to contaminate the recycling stream with a product that isn't supposed to be there.